Hello everyone, we are actively entering into summertime, or the weather where I live can't decide if it's summer because it goes from like 40 to 80 in like one day. But we are not the weather report from an undisclosed location. We are here to talk about some of the best summer horror movies of all time. Of course, this is my list, and this may even change year to year. So I have 3 films today. If you guys like this, I might do another one. In no specific order, I have some of the best summertime horror movies probably ever. I actually cut a bunch from this, so if you have any more that you think work really well, please leave them in the comments down below. That would mean everything to me. Please make the comments a giant list of fantastic summer horror movies, because I love summer horror movies, and they definitely have a little place in my heart. So we can all watch a bunch of scary horror movies that maybe we haven't seen. So without much further ado, let's get into the list. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is up there for one of the most perfect examples of a summertime horror movie. I think for this movie, there are specifically 2 things that make this... I think for this film specifically, there are 2 things that makes this film a perfect summertime movie. First, the cinematography of this movie is one of the best cinematographies from any horror movie I've ever seen. For example, the scene where we follow one of our main characters towards the house with the crystal blue skies just feels really warm. Or the shots like where we see the van along the horizon. Other than the cinematography, the film just feels hot. Like, just watching it, I swear your body temperature will jump 5 degrees just from seeing the movie. Everyone is sweating, the dirt somehow feels dry, and somehow there's always a layer of like mirage to everything, which really just makes you feel so warm and like uncomfortably hot. And I think this movie makes you feel tense from the very, very beginning of the film, even when the villains aren't there, and I think that also kind of warms you up and heats you up. The fact that it takes place in Texas and you can kind of like feel the stench like when they pass by slaughterhouse, like you can almost smell it. Maybe it's just because where I live, I kind of get like a little taste of all these smells, a tiny bit. It's like kind of know like what everything is like. The next 2 films are somewhat cliches as they take place during the most summer horror cliche of probably all time, the summer camp. So for this section, just to defer them a little bit, we'll be talking about the first one in this franchise and kind of more about the whole franchise just in general. This is Friday the 13th, if you didn't guess that. I'm a big fan of Friday the 13th, if you didn't know. I think the reason, besides the fact that everyone always goes to summer camps during summertime, that this movie kind of hits the way it does during summer. For me personally, I think it's partially because I also worked as, like, at a summer camp. I also went to a bunch of summer camps as a kid, and I worked at summer camps, and so I kind of get both ends of, like, how a summer camp kind of runs and works. And so for me personally, it kind of, like, connects summer to the idea of what Friday the 13th is. I think part of the summerness of this movie is like the opposite of what Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. It doesn't feel super hot. It doesn't feel like you're sweating the whole time. But the weather is exactly what it's like when it rains and there's that weird thunderstorm where the rain itself is really hot and warm and the thunder just rolls in from hours. Like you can see it far out into the distance and it just rolls in slowly. It's something so special about that. It makes the movie feel so special because it's not a lot of scenes that you kind of feel that, like, the rain and the... I guess in the movie it's kind of like evil's kind of like rummaging onto the camp, right? But it expresses something about a very specific, like, you know, June thunderstorm that many movies don't really talk about. And I think this is one of the best horror movies to kind of just pop in like in the middle of June and just watch it and feel right at home, feel like it makes whole sense what your outside looks like in comparison to the movie. But I think the whole franchise really as a whole is perfect for summertime because depending on what your kind of vibe is, there's always something you can watch. If you're wanting more of a classic, Friday the 13th Part 1. If you want something more like, you know, family cabin, you have Part 4 or Part 3. If you're looking for something really funny, you have Part 6. If you're looking for Carrie versus Jason, you have Part 7. I think there's a lot of things you can do. And I think there's just a lot of different variations for what kind of movie you're looking for, but it'll always feel like summertime in some aspect. Genuinely, I think the only movie in the entirety of the franchise that doesn't feel like a summertime horror movie in the same way would probably be Freddy vs. Jason, but that's just because of like how much Freddy, it's kind of more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie than it is a Friday the 13th movie. That's probably partially why, but either way, Friday the 13th is a perfect summertime horror film. Part 1, franchise as a whole, you can kind of pick which movie you like. The next one on this list is a completely different view of summer. It's a very, very different version of Friday the 13th. Unlike Friday the 13th, where there are no children at the summer camp, this one focuses entirely on the fact that there are children at the summer camp. This one focuses entirely on the fact that there are children at the sleepaway camp. Pun intended, because this movie is sleepaway camp. I think this film feels so much like a summer camp as a kid, besides like all the murder, of course, because you can see all the different activities and sports and all the different fun things you could do at a summer camp, whether you like it or not, which I think is kind of funny sometimes. So you just kind of feel like all the same feelings you did like in between like all the murders and all the other weird things that happen in this movie. And I also think this movie shows kind of a different aspect of the summer camp. There's a lot of bullies, there's like all the kind of weird social things that happen at summer camps that only happen for a week and you're out, and how much that kind of like influence your entire life as a kid, and like how important it is to like have a good time at a summer camp. And this movie kind of shows you how like what a summer camp can really be like. So I think this movie also works really well as a summertime movie because of just all the different things that goes on, the way it makes you feel, and the way that just it feels like you remember summer camp being, again, in between all the murders and all the other weird things that happen in this movie. Just like the baseball scene or the water balloon scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It's just these little moments that feel like summertime. Thank you all for watching, liking, and subscribing. I really genuinely appreciate it. If you want to, you can follow us. It's on Instagram at MediaBite Company, and TikTok is at MediaBite Co. Patreon has ad-free podcasts, commentaries, and a bunch of other really cool things coming your way soon, so be on the lookout for that. That is patreon.com/MediaBite. On the podcast network, we have Diary of an Indie Filmmaker, all things filmmaking. We have Slash It, which is all things horror films, more like in this vein, and Exploring Cinema, which is all about just general movies, and I do that podcast with Alex, so that's more of a duo kind of podcast. We talk about movies, general movies, random movies, and we have fun. So that is it for today. I really appreciate you watching, liking, all that stuff. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.